Do you ever think about those recipes you could only find in Grandma's handwritten cookbook and feel what they meant? Those handwritten recipes shaped everyday meals and the rhythm of family life? What faded from our homes when those pages stopped being opened? Snowball frosting cake was the fluffy white coconut-covered Christmas dessert that looked like a mound of fresh snow glowing under holiday lights. Betty Crocker promoted this cake throughout the 1950s as the perfect winter showpiece thanks to its cloud-soft frosting and blanket of shredded coconut. The cake layers were baked light and tender, then frosted generously with boiled icing or fluffy white frosting before being coated on all sides. When finished, it resembled a snow-covered hill, making it a magical centerpiece for children and adults alike. Its flavor was simple, sweet, and comforting, and its appearance made it unforgettable at winter gatherings. Grandparents loved serving it because it looked dramatic, without requiring expensive ingredients, and it held its shape well on long holiday tables warmed by laughter and soft lights. Every slice felt like a small celebration wrapped in white. Ham salad spread was a quick-to-make mixture that turned leftover cooked ham into a creamy, flavorful filling ideal for crackers or sandwiches. This recipe combined finely chopped ham with mayonnaise and sweet pickle relish, creating a tangy and savory spread that added zest to otherwise plain bread or snack options. It was a favorite in mid-century American homes for its ease and versatility, making use of small amounts of ham that might otherwise be wasted. Perfect for lunches, potlucks, or casual dinners, the spread offered a satisfying protein boost without much effort. The balance of creamy mayo and crunchy relish provided a pleasant texture contrast, keeping the flavor interesting. Ham salad spread was especially prized for its ability to stretch ingredients while still delivering comfort and taste, embodying the resourcefulness typical of the time. Many households passed down their own twists on the recipe, making it a cherished part of family culinary heritage. Wiener Winks were pure Betty Crocker magic. Silly name, simple ingredients, and a whole lot of charm. You took a slice of sandwich bread, rolled it flat, wrapped it around a hot dog, and baked it until crisp. Some people added a slice of cheese before rolling it up. Others brushed it with butter or egg wash for a golden crunch. You could even cut the hot dogs in half and stand them up like candles for extra flair. Either way, what came out of the oven was warm, toasty, and ready to dip. It was the kind of thing you made for lunch on a lazy Sunday, or served at birthday parties with a paper plate and a pickle on the side. It also showed up in lunchboxes with a little container of ketchup or mustard tucked beside it. The name made kids laugh. The taste made them come back for more. You could find this recipe in dozens of Betty Crocker cookbooks from the 1960s and 1970s, usually tucked into the Fun Foods for Kids or Cooking with Kids sections. It was not fancy, it was not healthy, but it was easy, cheap, and made everyone smile. Sometimes that was all you needed. Making fluffy rice by adding a pat of butter before serving was a finishing touch that added richness and enhanced flavor to simple steamed or boiled rice. This technique, recommended in Betty Crocker's cookbooks, involved stirring in butter just before serving to coat the grains, giving the rice a glossy appearance and a smooth, buttery taste. The addition of butter elevated plain rice from a basic side dish to a comforting accompaniment suitable for a variety of meals. This simple step also helped prevent the rice from clumping together, improving texture and appeal. The tip reflected mid-century home cooks' desire to make everyday dishes more enjoyable with minimal effort. Buttered rice fit well with the era's emphasis on richness and indulgence in family meals, especially when other ingredients were modest. This finishing touch continues to be a beloved way to prepare rice, combining ease and flavor in classic American cooking. Banana and mayonnaise sandwiches were a Depression-era creation that lingered into Betty Crocker's mid-century guides, carried by thrift and habit. Slices of ripe banana were laid between bread spread with mayonnaise, creating a combination that was creamy, tangy, and sweet. Sometimes a sprinkle of sugar or cinnamon was added, but the basic recipe remained plain and simple. Families liked the sandwich because it was filling, inexpensive, and relied on ingredients that were always on hand. During lean times, it provided quick energy and nourishment without the need for meat or expensive extras. By the mid-century, it had become a nostalgic recipe that older generations continued to prepare. Children often loved the sweetness, while adults accepted it as a reminder of harder times. Though unusual by today's standards, banana and mayonnaise sandwiches represented the resilience and creativity of kitchens that refused to go hungry. They reflected Betty Crocker's recognition of recipes that carried both history and thrift. Today, they are more remembered as curiosities, but once they were a dependable staple. Jellied chicken salad cups were the quirky, retro lunch you probably saw at your grandmother's house or flipped past in old homemaker guides. You made chicken salad, shredded chicken, mayo, celery, a little seasoning, and then set the whole thing in gelatin until it firmed up. It sounds strange now, but back then, this was peak luncheon presentation. You scooped the wobbly salad into lettuce leaves, added a sprig of parsley or a cherry tomato, and served it cold. It was light, chilled, and looked fancier than the ingredients actually were. These showed up at potlucks, garden parties, and quick family lunches when the oven stayed off and time was short. Gelatin molds made everything feel more polished, even when it came straight from leftovers and pantry basics. Old cookbooks loved recipes like this because they stretched food, required no cooking, and made lunch look impressive with barely any effort. It might feel out of place today, but jellied chicken salad cups were fast, filling, and weirdly fun when they first hit the table. Cranberry bread pudding was the thrifty warm dessert families made when leftover bread met cans or jars of cranberry sauce in the days after Christmas. The bread soaked up milk eggs, sugar and spices transforming into a custard-like base that baked into soft, comforting layers. Cranberry swirls added tart sweetness throughout, making each bite feel festive. Served warm with cream or butter, it was a dessert rooted in resourcefulness and holiday flavor. It captured the Betty Crocker belief that nothing should go to waste and that simple ingredients could bring deep comfort. The pudding filled kitchens with a gentle, spicy aroma that made even quiet winter evenings feel special, and it offered a way to turn scraps into something loved rather than forgotten. Grandparents remembered it as a dessert that made the season last just a little longer. Baked zucchini chips were a healthier and speedy alternative to fried snacks, made by slicing zucchini thin, lightly breading them, and baking until crisp. This recipe took advantage of abundant summer produce, turning it into a satisfying snack that was easy to prepare and gentle on the wallet. The light breading added crunch without overwhelming the delicate flavor of the zucchini, making these chips appealing to both children and adults. Baked zucchini chips reflected the mid-century emphasis on practical cooking methods that stretched ingredients and reduced waste. They could be served as a side dish or party snack, fitting well into the quick meal planning popular at the time. This recipe demonstrated how simple steps could transform fresh vegetables into something special, providing a nostalgic reminder of homegrown goodness and easy, wholesome cooking. Dilly bread was a surprise hit in the 1970s. Made with cottage cheese, dried dill, and just a bit of onion, it rose soft and warm with a smell that wrapped around the kitchen like a hug. This was not sandwich bread. This was sit down and rip a piece off kind of bread. It baked in a round dish or a loaf pan, but always came out looking golden and rustic. You would slice it thick, spread it with butter, and watch it disappear. Some folks served it with soup. Others brought it to brunches or church potlucks. Betty Crocker printed it in several editions during the herb craze of the 70s, right when people were growing dill in little windowsill gardens and putting cottage cheese in everything. It was fluffy, flavorful, and full of character. Not fancy, just good. It reminded you of homemade bread without all the kneading and fuss. And once you made it once, you probably made it again. Using waxed paper to roll out pie dough without sticking was a simple hack that made dough handling and transfer easier for home bakers. This method involved placing the dough between two sheets of waxed paper before rolling, preventing it from sticking to the rolling pin or work surface. The waxed paper acted as a non-stick barrier, reducing flour use and keeping the dough moist and pliable. Once rolled out, the dough could be easily lifted and transferred to pie pans without tearing or stretching. Betty Crocker's cookbooks promoted this technique as a way to reduce frustration and mess in mid-century kitchens, especially for novice bakers. The hack improved the overall pie-making process, resulting in better-shaped crusts and less wasted dough. It reflected the period's focus on practical solutions that saved time and improved results in home cooking. Using waxed paper for rolling dough remains a trusted tip for bakers aiming for perfect pastries. Celery and cheese sandwiches were a crunchy mid-century favorite that showed up in countless Betty Crocker booklets and party menus. The filling was made by mixing diced celery into softened American cheese spread, sometimes with a little mayonnaise to make it creamier. This gave the sandwich both crunch and a mild tang, balancing the sharpness of processed cheese with the fresh snap of celery. The mixture was spread generously between soft slices of white bread, then cut into triangles or finger sandwiches for luncheons. Housewives liked the recipe because it was inexpensive, easy to prepare, and felt a little more refined than a plain cheese sandwich. Children often enjoyed the texture, even if celery was not their favorite vegetable, because the cheese masked the stronger flavor. These sandwiches also kept well, making them perfect for picnics or potlucks. They represented a thrifty use of pantry staples during a time when convenience and creativity went hand in hand. Today they are nearly forgotten, but once they symbolized the playful ingenuity of mid-century kitchens that found joy in the simplest combinations. Cream cheese and olive sandwiches were once the fancy tea lunch that quietly slipped onto regular kitchen tables when people needed something fast. You whipped cream cheese until fluffy, stirred in chopped green olives, and spread the whole mix onto rye or white bread. It sounds strange now, but back then, this salty, creamy combo was considered upscale, especially if you cut the crusts off. It showed up at luncheons, garden parties, and even school lunches when moms wanted to make something that looked like they tried. Old cookbooks listed it under easy entertaining, but most folks made it because it came together in 5 minutes and filled you up without cooking a thing. Some people swapped in pimento olives or added sliced cucumbers, but the classic version stayed simple, creamy, salty, and fast. It may not win over modern taste buds, but for families watching the clock and the grocery bill, these little sandwiches were a retro shortcut that stuck around when time was tight. Peppermint chiffon pie was the pale pink cloud of a dessert that once appeared on many Betty Crocker winter menus, offering a light, airy alternative to heavier Christmas sweets. It began with crushed peppermint candy folded into a chiffon mixture of whipped cream, gelatin, and sugar, creating a soft pastel filling poured into a simple crust. As it chilled, it firmed into a delicate slice that melted on the tongue, leaving a gentle mint sweetness. Its color alone made it perfect for holiday tables, reminiscent of candy canes and festive ribbons. Families served it after heavy meals because it felt refreshing instead of overwhelming. Over time, chiffon pies lost popularity, and peppermint desserts shifted toward bark and cookies, leaving this once beloved pie behind. Yet, it remains a symbol of mid-century elegance, and the Betty Crocker approach to creating desserts that looked cheerful and tasted light. It was a dish meant to bring a breath of winter freshness to the end of a warm family meal. Creamed peas on toast were a humble yet comforting meal that brought together tender peas and a creamy white sauce served over warm toast. This simple recipe used frozen or canned peas cooked gently in a sauce made from butter, flour, and milk to create a rich topping that was both satisfying and quick to prepare. Often enjoyed as a light lunch or snack, creamed peas on toast offered a balance of textures and flavors that appealed across generations. It was an easy way to turn pantry staples into a warming dish that felt both familiar and indulgent. The recipe's quick cook time and minimal ingredients matched the mid-century focus on practicality and taste. Many families came to associate this dish with homey comfort and the ingenuity of making the most of what was on hand. Cabbage roll casserole was Betty Crocker's way of saying, "We love stuffed cabbage, but let us not roll anything tonight." Instead of wrapping meat and rice in individual cabbage leaves, you layered everything in a baking dish: ground beef, onion, cooked rice, chopped cabbage, and tomato sauce. Then you baked it until it all settled into one soft, savory whole. It was easier, faster, and nobody had to wrestle a cabbage leaf into submission. The flavor stayed the same: hearty, slightly sweet, and rich with tomato. But the time spent in the kitchen got cut in half. This was the kind of shortcut that made its way into every casseroles for busy families chapter. Some people added garlic or Worcestershire. Others just followed the basic recipe to the letter and let it speak for itself. It filled the house with the kind of smell that made you stop and close your eyes. A little tang, a little comfort, a lot of heart. That was the Betty way. Preventing brown sugar from hardening by adding a slice of bread was a classic pantry hack recommended in Betty Crocker's cookbooks to keep this essential ingredient soft and easy to use. Brown sugar naturally tends to dry out and clump when exposed to air, making it difficult to scoop and measure. Placing a small piece of fresh bread in the container created a humid environment that helped maintain moisture in the sugar, preventing it from hardening. This simple yet effective trick saved time and frustration in the kitchen, especially for recipes requiring smooth brown sugar. It was a practical solution embraced by mid-century cooks who valued convenience and resourcefulness. The hack minimized waste and kept baking processes running smoothly. Betty Crocker's advice highlighted attention to detail in everyday cooking, reinforcing the importance of small habits that improved kitchen efficiency. This trick continues to be widely used by bakers seeking to preserve the quality of their brown sugar. Pimento cheese sandwiches were once one of Betty Crocker's proudest mid-century staples, appearing again and again in booklets and pamphlets. The spread was made with shredded cheddar, diced pimentos, and mayonnaise, creating a mixture that was creamy, tangy, and colorful. Spread between slices of soft white bread or tucked into rolls, it became a dependable filler for luncheons, picnics, and children's school meals. Housewives valued it because it was inexpensive, easy to prepare in large batches, and looked cheerful on a party tray. The red flecks of pimento gave the sandwich a festive look, making it stand out against plainer offerings. Children enjoyed it as a mild, cheesy treat, while adults liked its sharpness balanced with creaminess. The recipe spread across the South especially, becoming a signature of both home kitchens and community gatherings. Betty Crocker promoted it heavily as a thrifty lunch solution, and for decades it was a household favorite. Today, it is remembered fondly but rarely made in its original form. Cornbread pancakes with applesauce were the sweet, savory shortcut lunch you could pull together when the pantry looked bare, but you still wanted something warm. You grabbed a box of Jiffy cornbread mix, stirred in some water or milk, dropped spoonfuls into a hot skillet, and fried up little golden pancakes. They were crisp around the edges, soft in the center, and ready in minutes. Most folks topped them with a dollop of cold applesauce straight from the jar for that sweet, salty combination everyone quietly loved. It was a weird mix, but it worked, especially when groceries were low and creativity was high. Old-school lunch menus listed these because they were filling, fast, and cheap, making them a favorite for busy parents or frugal school cafeterias. You could dress them up with honey or butter, but the classic stayed simple. Cornbread cakes with a scoop of applesauce, ready in 10 minutes flat. It was comfort food that took little effort and brought just enough sweetness to brighten a rough day. Holiday ribbon salad layered color, flavor, and texture into one tall, shimmering dish that stood out in Betty Crocker Christmas cookbooks. Each layer used a different mixture of gelatin cream cheese fruit or whipped topping poured gently over the previous layer after it cooled just enough to hold its shape. The final result was a striped dessert that looked like a wrapped present sliced open at the table, revealing bright, cheerful bands of red, green, white, or pink grandparents made ribbon salad because it felt festive and show-stopping, even though the ingredients were inexpensive and widely available. It was chilled in loaf pans or ring molds, then unmolded onto lettuce or a serving tray dusted with coconut for extra sparkle. Kids loved its sweetness, adults loved its novelty, and hosts loved how it held together perfectly when sliced ribbon salads slowly disappeared as dessert trends shifted towards simpler baked treats. But in its time, this dish was a celebration centerpiece. It represented patience, creativity, and the belief that holiday meals deserved color and joy. Even if nobody makes it now, ribbon salad remains a bright memory of old Christmas tables that sparkled with intention and care. Swiss vegetable pie was a savory holiday brunch dish Betty Crocker promoted when families hosted Christmas morning gatherings and needed something warm and impressive without being costly. It began with a crust, or sometimes no crust at all, filled with vegetables such as spinach, carrots, onions, or whatever was available, mixed with eggs, cream, and Swiss cheese. As it baked, the custard set into a firm, tender filling while the cheese melted throughout, giving each bite a gentle nuttiness. The aroma of vegetables and cheese drifting from the oven signaled a slower, quieter moment in the holiday. Families sliced it into wedges served beside fruit, coffee, and pastries, creating a breakfast that felt comforting and celebratory. At the same time, Swiss vegetable pie belonged to an era when home cooks relied on versatile recipes that could adapt to pantry ingredients while still looking elegant on the table. It faded from modern menus as brunch trends shifted and quicker options took its place, but it remains a charming part of Betty Crocker's Christmas history. It reflected a holiday morning built on softness, warmth, and gathering before the bustle of the day began. Tomato and cheese melt was a simple yet elegant open-faced sandwich that brought fresh and savory flavors to the table in a flash. This recipe called for slices of ripe tomato layered on bread, topped with cheese such as cheddar or American, lightly seasoned, then broiled until the cheese melted into a bubbly golden crown. The juicy acidity of the tomato paired perfectly with the creamy, savory cheese, offering a contrast that delighted many palates. It was an easy dish to prepare for a quick lunch or light dinner, requiring only a handful of ingredients that were often on hand. The broiling step added just the right amount of crispness to the bread, making each bite texturally satisfying. Tomato and cheese melt showcased the mid-century preference for simple, fast meals that did not sacrifice flavor or comfort. It was a dish that could be assembled in minutes yet felt substantial and wholesome. Many families treasured it as a nostalgic reminder of no-fuss cooking that brought warmth and satisfaction with minimal effort. Golden Glow salad was as cheerful as it sounds. A molded salad made from orange or lemon gelatin, finely shredded carrots, and crushed pineapple. It was Betty's answer to healthy eating that still jiggled. It showed up on dinner plates and potluck tables, sitting tall in ring molds or scooped onto a leaf of iceberg lettuce. This was not dessert. It was salad. The carrots gave it crunch. The pineapple gave it sweetness. And the gelatin made it behave. You could make it a day ahead and forget about it until dinner time. Some people topped it with a spoonful of mayonnaise. Others left it plain with just a sprinkle of chopped nuts. It was light, refreshing, and surprisingly popular during the 1960s and 1970s when people wanted to feel like they were eating better, even if it was still wrapped in Jell-O. It was not trying to impress. It was just trying to brighten your plate. And for a lot of people, it did. Adding a pinch of salt to sweet pie fillings was a subtle seasoning tip that Betty Crocker's cookbook shared to balance and brighten dessert flavors. While salt is often associated with savory dishes, its inclusion in fruit or custard fillings enhanced the overall taste by cutting through sweetness and amplifying natural flavors. This small amount of salt helped prevent the dessert from tasting overly sugary or one-dimensional. It was especially effective in pies featuring apples, berries, or pumpkins, where a touch of salt brought out depth and complexity. The trick encouraged home bakers to think beyond basic sweetness and embrace flavor layering. This technique reflected mid-century culinary wisdom that even simple ingredients could be used strategically to improve results. Adding salt to sweet fillings became a hallmark of thoughtful dessert preparation, elevating humble pies to memorable treats. The tip remains a valuable lesson for modern cooks seeking balanced and nuanced sweets. Asparagus roll sandwiches were a familiar sight at mid-century luncheons, combining pantry staples with a little creativity. Soft white bread was trimmed of its crusts, spread lightly with mayonnaise, and wrapped around canned asparagus spears into neat rolls. The rolls were sometimes chilled before serving so they would stay firm on the tray, making them convenient for teas and socials. They looked elegant without requiring much time or skill, which made them popular with housewives who needed to entertain on a budget. Canned asparagus kept the recipe available year-round, and the bread and mayonnaise softened its sharp flavor. Children often avoided them, but adults found them charming, especially when served alongside dainty cakes or cookies. They fit perfectly into Betty Crocker's idea of recipes that made gatherings feel festive, even with limited ingredients. Today, asparagus roll sandwiches have disappeared, but once they were a clever way to turn ordinary food into entertaining fare. Leftover meatloaf sandwiches with ketchup were the reliable lunches that showed up in fridges across America the day after dinner. You sliced cold meatloaf thin, layered it onto soft sandwich bread, added a squirt of ketchup, and called it done. It was fast, filling, and made sure that last night's dinner stretched just a little further. Meatloaf itself was all about using affordable ingredients, ground beef, breadcrumbs, eggs, and stretching them into a meal for the whole family. Turning leftovers into sandwiches was the next logical step, and it worked. You got a hearty, savory lunch ready in under 10 minutes with barely any effort. Old cookbooks loved suggesting it. Lunchboxes were packed with it, and kids grew up knowing exactly what was coming after meatloaf night. You could add cheese or lettuce if you had them, but most families kept it plain with just meatloaf and ketchup. It might not sound glamorous now, but back then it was the fast, frugal lunch that kept families fed and made every bit of dinner count. Christmas snow salad was the kind of festive chilled dish that Betty Crocker promoted when families loved adding creamy sweet salads to their holiday tables. It was made from whipped cream pineapple marshmallows and sometimes nuts folded together until the mixture resembled soft winter snow piled into a glass bowl. The salad sat in the refrigerator for hours where it firmed slightly, becoming cool and airy with every ingredient suspended in a cloud-like mixture. On Christmas Day, it was spooned onto plates beside ham or turkey, adding a bright sweet contrast to the savory dishes. Children loved its softness, while adults appreciated its novelty and gentle sweetness, especially in an era when holiday meals often featured both savory and dessert. Like sides, Christmas snow salad was more than a dish, it was a moment of whimsy on an otherwise heavy winter table. Its white color mirrored the season and made every plate look more cheerful. Over time, tastes shifted and the idea of sweet salads faded from Christmas menus, leaving recipes like this tucked inside old holiday cookbooks. Yet for grandparents, it represented a style of entertaining where joy was found in simple ingredients whipped into something that felt magical. It was a taste of mid-century Christmases when creativity, warmth, and a bit of playful indulgence defined the holiday meal. Bacon and egg cups were a clever and speedy breakfast option, made by lining muffin tins with strips of bacon, cracking eggs into each cup, and baking until set. This recipe combined crispy bacon with gently cooked eggs, making for a delicious and visually appealing dish that could be served right from the pan. It was popular because it allowed for quick prep and easy portioning, perfect for feeding a family on busy mornings. The combination of savory bacon and protein-rich eggs provided a filling start to the day without requiring much hands-on cooking time. Bacon and egg cups exemplified mid-century ingenuity in the kitchen, turning simple ingredients into something special with minimal effort. They were also great for meal planning, as leftovers could be stored and reheated. This breakfast dish remains a nostalgic favorite for those who appreciate easy, tasty, and efficient cooking. Turkey Divan had a name that made it sound harder than it was. In reality, it was just leftover turkey, frozen broccoli, and a creamy cheddar sauce baked until bubbly. But it looked impressive. The sauce held everything together like a warm blanket, and the breadcrumbs on top made it feel finished. People made it the day after Thanksgiving, the week after Christmas, and any time turkey needed new life. Some versions used mushroom soup, others made a roux from scratch. But either way, it was the kind of recipe that turned scraps into a meal you were proud of. It baked in a square dish, cut into clean portions, and held up on a plate. It felt classy. It tasted like effort, even if it only took 20 minutes to throw together. You could find it in the Company Coming chapter or the weeknight dinner page. It lived between leftover logic and elegance. That was the genius of Betty Crocker. Making buttermilk substitute with vinegar or lemon juice was a widely used shortcut in mid-century American kitchens when buttermilk was not always readily available or affordable. This simple trick involved adding 1 tablespoon of white vinegar or lemon juice to a cup of regular milk and letting it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. The acid in the vinegar or lemon juice curdled the milk slightly, mimicking the tangy flavor and thicker consistency of buttermilk. This substitute worked well in recipes such as pancakes, biscuits, and cakes, where buttermilk's acidity was necessary to react with baking soda for leavening. Betty Crocker's cookbooks embraced this hack for its practicality, helping home cooks achieve consistent results without needing specialty ingredients. The trick saved time and money, reducing trips to the store and preventing spoiled buttermilk from going to waste. This approach reflected the resourcefulness encouraged in the post-war era, where adaptability in the kitchen was valued. It remains a trusted method today for anyone needing a quick buttermilk replacement. Cucumber and peanut butter sandwiches were one of Betty Crocker's more curious creations, but they had their place in mid-century kitchens. Crisp cucumber slices were layered over creamy peanut butter on soft bread, creating a balance of crunch, freshness, and richness. The combination may sound unusual today, but it was once promoted as both refreshing and nourishing. The sandwich was inexpensive, easy to prepare, and offered more protein than a plain cucumber sandwich. Children often encountered them in lunchboxes, while adults served them at casual luncheons or picnics. The cool cucumbers cut through the heavy peanut butter, making each bite feel balanced despite the odd pairing. Housewives valued the recipe because it used ingredients that were always on hand and required no cooking. It reflected the experimental spirit of the era, where even sandwiches became a canvas for mixing textures and flavors. Though it has faded from memory, the cucumber and peanut butter sandwich once carried the Betty Crocker promise of thrift, creativity, and a touch of novelty. Celery boats with peanut butter and raisins were the fun lunch that every old-school cookbook claimed kids would love, even though most kids quietly picked off the raisins when no one was looking. You sliced celery into sticks, filled the groove with peanut butter, and dotted them with raisins, proudly calling them ants on a log. It came together in 2 minutes flat, looked cute, and somehow counted as lunch when the cupboards were nearly empty. Parents loved it because it was quick, frugal, and felt just healthy enough to avoid the guilt of another peanut butter sandwich. It was simple, crunchy, a little salty, and just filling enough to buy you some time before dinner. Some families swapped the raisins for nuts, dried cranberries, or chocolate chips when they wanted to shake things up, but the basic version stuck around for decades. You would find this recipe tucked into picnic cookbooks, school lunch guides, and old magazines promising fun, budget-friendly meals made with whatever happened to be in the fridge. It was not flashy, but it made celery a little less boring, and for families watching their grocery bills, that was good enough. Chicken liver's pat log was one of Betty Crocker's attempts to make mid-century Christmas cocktail parties feel sophisticated, using ingredients that were inexpensive yet capable of appearing luxurious. Chicken livers were sautéed, blended with butter seasonings, and sometimes a splash of fortified wine before being molded into a smooth log shape and chilled until firm. Once unmolded, it was coated with herbs, nuts, or paprika to create a striking presentation that fit the elegant, entertaining style of the era. Hosts served thin slices on crackers or toast points, believing this dish brought a touch of continental flair to American holiday gatherings. The pat log became part of the vintage tradition in which presentation mattered deeply, and thrifty ingredients could be transformed with technique, imagination, and confidence. Curried chicken salad was a flavorful twist on the traditional chicken salad, mixing cooked, shredded chicken with mayonnaise and a dash of curry powder for warmth and spice. This cold salad was perfect for sandwiches or served on crackers as an appetizer, providing a quick and satisfying meal option with an exotic flair. Its preparation required little time, but offered a complex taste profile that contrasted with simpler mayo-based salads of the era. The addition of curry powder reflected a mid-century curiosity with international flavors that began permeating American kitchens, albeit in mild and accessible forms. Curried chicken salad balanced creamy, savory, and subtly spicy notes, making it a popular choice for those seeking something different yet easy. It was ideal for packed lunches, picnics, or quick dinners when time was short but taste mattered. This recipe showcased the creativity home cooks embraced by blending familiar ingredients with new seasonings to keep meals interesting and delicious. Do not let the name fool you. There was no chocolate in sight. Party potato fudge balls were Betty Crocker at her most imaginative and most economical. These were mashed potatoes rolled into tight balls, dipped in butter or egg wash, then coated in crushed cornflakes for crunch. The name came from their appearance, round, shiny, and brown like candy. But the taste? Pure, savory comfort. These were meant to be served at gatherings, especially when you were short on time, meat, and money. They were soft on the inside, crisp on the outside, and weirdly addictive. They worked as a side, a snack, or even the main dish if you had enough of them. Some people stuffed them with cheese or bacon bits if they had extra. Others just served them plain with a dollop of ketchup or mustard on the side. It was a strange little gem buried in the back pages of mid-century Betty Crocker cookbooks, and a reminder that sometimes the simplest things brought the biggest smiles. Nobody makes them anymore, but maybe they should. Using parchment paper to line cake pans for easy removal was a baking tip that improved cleanup and presentation in mid-century home kitchens. By cutting parchment to fit the bottom of cake pans, bakers ensured that cakes could be lifted out effortlessly without sticking or breaking. This technique reduced the risk of cracked or torn cake layers, allowing for neater frosting and stacking. Additionally, it saved time on cleaning, as pans required less scrubbing and washing. Betty Crocker's cookbooks promoted this method as a simple step that elevated homemade baking results. It was especially useful for delicate cakes or those with sticky batters. Lining pans with parchment reflected the period's growing focus on technique and presentation in home baking. The tip remains standard practice today, helping bakers achieve professional quality cakes with ease. Cabbage slaw sandwiches were a thrifty summer recipe Betty Crocker promoted as both refreshing and practical for busy households. Shredded cabbage and carrots mixed with mayonnaise were tucked into soft rolls or slices of bread, creating a creamy, crunchy, and tangy filling. The texture offered a welcome contrast to heavier meat-filled lunches, making it a popular option on hot days. Housewives relied on the recipe because cabbage was inexpensive, easy to find year-round, and simple to stretch into meals that fed many mouths. Coleslaw kept well in the refrigerator, which made the sandwiches perfect for picnics, potlucks, and outdoor gatherings. Children enjoyed the creamy crunch, while adults valued its lightness during summer heat. It also reflected Betty Crocker's effort to highlight vegetables not as sides, but as the main attraction in thrifty cooking. Though they are rarely remembered today, cabbage slaw sandwiches once represented ingenuity and seasonal comfort on the mid-century table. Quick ham salad on saltines was the fast fix lunch that made diced ham, mayo, and a little pickle relish stretch way further than you would think. You chopped leftover ham, mixed it with mayonnaise and relish, and spooned it onto a stack of crackers. That was lunch, done in minutes and surprisingly filling. Old cookbooks loved this recipe for being cheap, easy, and portable, which is why it kept popping up in school lunch guides and picnic sections. You could dress it up with celery or onions, but most families kept it simple with just ham, mayo, and a little crunch. It might not look like much, but it worked when you needed protein, salt, and something satisfying without standing over a stove. The saltines soaked up just enough moisture, the ham salad added creaminess, and together it passed for lunch, even when the fridge was running low. Spiced orange glazed carrots were once considered an elegant Betty Crocker Christmas side dish, the kind of recipe that appeared in glossy holiday magazine spreads and hostess guides during the mid-century era. She sliced the carrots into soft rounds, simmering them until tender before covering them in a glossy orange glaze made from juice zest butter and warm spices. The glaze thickened gently on the stove, turning into a fragrant syrup that clung to each piece and made the entire kitchen smell like winter warmth. When she poured the carrots into a serving dish, their bright orange color shone against the darker holiday table settings, and the sweet citrus aroma drifted through the room like a burst of sunshine on a cold day. This dish was meant to add sophistication to inexpensive vegetables, and it succeeded by transforming something simple into something festive. In those years, elegance did not come from price, but from intention presentation and the sense of celebration that infused every carefully prepared dish. The spiced carrots felt fancy even though they used ingredients that most families already had in their kitchens. They represented the mid-century dream that a Christmas table could feel elevated through thoughtful touches and small luxuries created with care. Today, dishes like this have faded, but they remain vivid in old Betty Crocker pages, where bright glazes and soft winter spices defined December cooking. Mayo and pickle sandwich spread was a creamy and tangy concoction that quickly became a household favorite for turning simple sandwiches into flavorful snacks. This easy-to-make spread combined smooth mayonnaise with finely chopped pickles, lending a perfect balance of richness and zesty crunch. It required very few ingredients but packed enough flavor to elevate plain bread and cold cuts into a satisfying meal. This recipe was especially popular because it was quick to prepare and used pantry staples, making it accessible to families during busy days or tighter budgets. The spread's tanginess cut through the richness of other sandwich components, providing a refreshing bite every time. For many, it was a nostalgic reminder of lunches packed for school or quick weekday dinners, evoking images of kitchen tables where comfort food did not have to be complicated. The mayo and pickle combination was a classic example of mid-century culinary ingenuity, using simple ingredients to create something greater than the sum of its parts. It was a spread that could be whipped up in moments but savored slowly, bringing together generations around the sandwich plate. You could smell the vinegar before you even saw it. Tomato aspic ring with cottage cheese center was one of those gelatin recipes that made you pause and squint. Made with tomato juice, lemon, a touch of spice, and unflavored gelatin, it set into a firm, glossy mold that looked more like art than food. Right in the center, a cold scoop of cottage cheese sat like a prize. It was chilled, sliced, and served with parsley or maybe a sprig of celery leaf if you were fancy. This dish was all about appearances. It looked organized, clean, respectable, and people loved it. Not because it was delicious necessarily, but because it was reliable. It held its shape. It stood tall on the plate, and it came straight from the Betty Crocker playbook of mid-century hospitality. Some people added olives or celery bits. Others swore by a dash of Worcestershire sauce. Either way, it was a staple at luncheons and ladies' club meetings, a showpiece more than a craving. It might not be your favorite dish now, but back then, it meant you had taste, or at least a good mold. Using a fork and hot water to easily peel hard-boiled eggs was a handy tip that saved time and effort in the kitchen. This technique involved gently tapping and cracking the shell, then dipping the egg in hot water while using a fork to loosen the shell's membrane. The warm water softened the membrane, making it easier to remove large pieces of shell without sticking to the egg white. This trick minimized frustration from stubborn shells and ensured cleaner, more presentable eggs for salads, deviled eggs, or snacks. Betty Crocker's inclusion of this tip highlighted practical kitchen shortcuts that improved cooking efficiency. It was especially useful when peeling multiple eggs quickly was necessary, such as during holiday gatherings or batch meal preparation. The method demonstrated the mid-century emphasis on clever yet simple solutions for common cooking challenges. Using hot water and a fork for peeling remains a popular trick today among home cooks seeking quick, mess-free results. Pineapple and cream cheese sandwiches reflected the mid-century taste for creative uses of canned fruit. Pineapple chunks or tidbits were drained and folded into whipped cream cheese, creating a filling that was tangy, creamy, and lightly sweet. Spread between slices of raisin bread, the sandwich carried both richness and a playful tropical touch. It appeared often at luncheons, parties, and teas where the combination of fruit and dairy felt novel. Housewives liked it because it was affordable, used shelf-stable canned goods, and looked cheerful on a plate. Children were often drawn to it because the pineapple made the cream cheese taste like a dessert filling instead of something savory. Served chilled, the sandwiches also traveled well for picnics and gatherings. They were a thrifty but imaginative use of common staples, and they highlighted Betty Crocker's emphasis on making food fun. Pineapple and cream cheese sandwiches have faded away, but they once symbolized thrift and celebration. Quick bologna slaw sandwiches were the shortcut lunch that turned cheap deli meat and leftover dressing into something filling in almost no time. You chopped up slices of bologna, mixed them with coleslaw dressing, usually that creamy, tangy kind, and spooned the whole mixture onto soft sandwich buns. That was lunch, ready in under 10 minutes and surprisingly satisfying. This quirky little meal showed up all over Southern quick lunch cookbooks and school cafeteria menus because it was fast, affordable, and made the most of what you had on hand. Bologna was the lunch meat that never seemed to run out, and coleslaw dressing lived in the fridge way longer than you expected. Some folks added shredded cabbage or onions to stretch it further, but most kept it simple with just bologna, creamy dressing, and a soft bun. It might not sound gourmet, but when the clock was ticking and grocery money was tight, these salty, creamy sandwiches were a lifesaver. You would find the recipe scribbled on old index cards, passed around at potlucks, or tucked inside faded community cookbooks that promised quick meals when time and energy were both running low. Green Christmas wreath salad was a lime gelatin mold shaped into a wreath and decorated with bright red cherries, giving tables a burst of holiday color. Betty Crocker popularized this dish for mid-century hostesses who wanted something festive, easy, and visually striking. The mixture combined lime gelatin, crushed pineapple cream cheese, or whipped topping depending on the household, and was chilled in a ring mold until firm. Once unmolded, it resembled a shiny green wreath, often set on lettuce leaves and dotted with cherries meant to mimic berries. It brought playful cheer to holiday spreads and was especially beloved by children who enjoyed its sweet, tart flavor. Over time, tastes shifted and colorful. Gelatin dishes disappeared from modern menus, but this wreath salad remains an unforgettable symbol of retro holiday charm. Microwave potato chips were an ingenious snack that brought the crispy satisfaction of fried potatoes to the kitchen in just minutes. Thin slices of potatoes were arranged on a microwave-safe plate and cooked until they became crisp and golden, offering a homemade alternative to store-bought chips. This recipe was popular because it required minimal oil and preparation time, making it perfect for quick cravings or impromptu gatherings. The ability to customize seasonings, from simple salt to paprika or garlic powder, made it versatile for different tastes. Microwave potato chips became a hit in households seeking convenience without sacrificing the joy of a crunchy snack. Unlike traditional frying, this method was seen as cleaner and quicker, fitting the post-war American lifestyle that increasingly valued speed and practicality. It reminded many of the creativity that home cooks embrace to adapt to new appliances and changing times. No apples? No problem. Betty Crocker had a solution that blew minds and confused taste buds. Mock apple pie was made with Ritz crackers, sugar, cinnamon, and lemon juice, but no fruit at all. It mimicked the texture and flavor of apple pie so well that most people had no idea what they were eating until you told them. The crackers stood in for apple slices. The syrupy mixture made everything gooey and sweet, and the pie crust held it all together like it had something to prove. People who grew up with it often remembered it as one of the most surprising dishes their mothers or grandmothers ever made. This dish came from lean times, first during the Depression, then again during World War II. But Betty revived it in later editions to teach frugality with flair. It was especially popular during rationing when apples were expensive or out of season, and pantry staples had to carry the load. Some people swore it tasted just like the real thing. Others thought it was weird in the best way. Either way, it got people talking. That was part of the charm. And maybe that is why it stayed in print for so long. A trick pie that fooled you into tasting comfort. Keeping cut apples from browning by soaking in salted water was a practical tip from Betty Crocker's cookbooks to maintain fresh-looking fruit slices. After cutting, apple slices were soaked briefly in cold water with a small amount of salt dissolved in it, which slowed the enzymatic browning process that causes discoloration. This method preserved the appealing color and crispness of apples, making them more attractive for serving in salads, snacks, or lunchboxes. The slight saltiness did not affect the flavor noticeably when done correctly, and the slices could be rinsed afterward if desired. This trick was especially useful for preparing fruit ahead of time or for gatherings where presentation mattered. Betty Crocker's advice demonstrated an understanding of both the science and practicality behind food preparation. The salted water soak remains a widely used kitchen hack for anyone wanting to keep apples fresh and visually appealing. Peanut butter and pickle sandwiches were among the most surprising of Betty Crocker's promoted recipes, yet they developed a loyal following. Creamy or crunchy peanut butter was spread generously on bread, then layered with sliced dill pickles for a combination that was salty, tangy, and nutty. At first glance, the pairing seemed odd, but the crunch of the pickles and the richness of the peanut butter created a strangely satisfying balance. Housewives liked them because they required no cooking and used only pantry staples, making them thrifty and quick. Children sometimes resisted, but adventurous eaters often came to love them for their bold flavor. The sandwich represented the mid-century taste for unusual but practical recipes that could stretch ingredients and surprise the table. It also reflected Betty Crocker's knack for suggesting pairings that were as thrifty as they were memorable. Peanut butter and pickle sandwiches have all but vanished from modern lunch tables, but they once symbolized the daring and experimental side of mid-century cooking. They remain a curious footnote in the story of America's thriftiest sandwiches. Cabbage and hot dog stir-fry was the skillet lunch that popped up in every budget cookbook from the 1970s, and it stuck around because it worked. You chopped cabbage, sliced up hot dogs, threw them in a hot pan with a little oil, and stir-fried the whole thing until crispy and tender. It was salty, smoky, crunchy, and came together in under 10 minutes. This recipe lived in frugal households, school cafeterias, and quick lunch guides because it used the cheapest ingredients possible and still filled you up. Cabbage was a go-to vegetable for stretching meals, and hot dogs were always around because they lasted forever in the fridge. Toss them together, add a little pepper or hot sauce, and lunch was ready fast. Some folks added onions or garlic, but most kept it simple, just cabbage and hot dogs sizzling in the pan. It was not fancy, but it was reliable, warm, and made sure nothing went to waste when groceries were tight. Holiday meatloaf with cherry glaze was Betty Crocker's attempt to dress up an inexpensive everyday dish for Christmas gatherings. The loaf was seasoned with onions, herbs, and breadcrumbs, then baked and brushed with a glossy cherry glaze that added sweetness, color, and shine. It brought a festive look to simple ingredients and made holiday meals feel abundant even when money was limited. Though unusual by modern standards, it reflects a time when presentation mattered and creativity turned inexpensive meals into something worthy of celebration. Families enjoyed its balance of savory and sweet, and the glaze made it look like something that belonged beside the more traditional holiday dishes. It was proof that even humble meals could feel special with the right touch. Baked cinnamon sugar donuts were a simple and fast sweet treat that became a beloved snack for families looking to enjoy dessert without a long wait. Made from a quick batter that was baked instead of fried, these donuts were then tossed in a mixture of cinnamon and sugar, creating a delightful crunchy coating and soft interior. Their appeal came from combining familiar flavors with a method that suited busy schedules, offering a dessert that could be ready in under 10 minutes. These donuts captured the essence of home baking in the 1950s and 1960s, when convenience and comfort needed to coexist. The warm spice of cinnamon gave the donuts a nostalgic edge, reminding many of holidays and special occasions. Baked cinnamon sugar donuts were an accessible way to enjoy a treat that felt homemade and satisfying without the fuss of traditional frying. You knew it was dinner time in the 1970s when you saw hot dogs sticking out of mashed potatoes like they owned the place. Hot dog crown casserole was loud, fun, and made almost entirely of leftovers. Mashed potatoes formed the base, with a mix of canned vegetables hidden underneath. Then came the crown, sliced hot dogs arranged in a circle like spokes on a wheel, ready to be browned under the broiler. It was part casserole, part sculpture, and it was kid-approved before that was even a marketing term. You might laugh now, but this was dinner theater back then. It used what was on hand, cost next to nothing, and gave kids a reason to actually eat vegetables. You could even find the recipe printed in the Kids Can Cook section of Betty's cookbooks. And while modern food blogs might call it kitschy, people back then called it Tuesday. It was filling, it was silly, and it got the job done. Softening stale bread with a damp paper towel and microwave was a quick fix promoted in Betty Crocker's cookbooks to restore freshness without baking. This technique involved wrapping the bread loosely in a damp paper towel and microwaving it for short intervals, creating steam that softened the crust and crumb. The method revived the bread's texture, making it more palatable for sandwiches or toast. It was a practical solution embraced by mid-century cooks to reduce waste and extend the usability of leftover bread. This trick saved time and energy compared to reheating in an oven and was particularly useful for small quantities. Betty Crocker's recommendation of this hack showcased the era's focus on efficiency and resourcefulness in the kitchen. While microwaves were not common in every home initially, the advice anticipated growing appliance use. The damp paper towel method remains a handy tip for anyone wanting to quickly refresh bread without fuss. Date and nut sandwiches were a sweet and hearty treat that carried strong ties to tea parties and afternoon luncheons. Chopped dates were mixed with walnuts or pecans, often bound with cream cheese or butter to create a spreadable filling. This mixture was layered thickly onto bread, sometimes whole wheat but often plain white, and cut into neat rectangles or finger sandwiches. The flavor was rich and sweet, with the nuts adding crunch and balance to the sticky dates. These sandwiches were common at ladies' gatherings, where they were considered refined yet simple to prepare. Housewives valued them for their thrift and nutrition, since dates were inexpensive and nuts were filling. They also stored well, making them practical for events where food had to be prepared ahead of time. The recipe reflected Betty Crocker's ability to turn pantry staples into something that felt indulgent. While they are rarely made today, date and nut sandwiches once carried both comfort and elegance, symbolizing a generation of home cooks who prized resourcefulness and tradition. Creamed corn and egg skillet was one of those weirdly satisfying lunches that showed up when the fridge was nearly empty and time was running short. You would grab a can of creamed corn, crack in a few eggs, and fry everything together in one pan. It sounds questionable now, but for families back then, it was warm, savory, and fast. Ready in minutes when kids came home hungry or dad's lunch break was short. It usually got served with plain white toast or leftover biscuits, soaking up every last bit of that creamy, buttery mess. Some folks added black pepper or a sprinkle of shredded cheese, but most kept it plain because that is what was in the cupboard. It was not glamorous, and nobody was putting this on a restaurant menu, but in old cookbooks it was listed right next to the hearty quick meals section. That is how you knew it worked. Turkey almondine casserole was Betty Crocker's answer to the week after Christmas, when leftover turkey filled refrigerators and families wanted something warm and new. She mixed turkey with a creamy sauce, vegetables, rice, or noodles, and topped it with toasted almonds for crunch. The casserole baked into a comforting dish that stretched leftovers into another complete meal, making the holiday season feel abundant even after the main feast was gone. It represented a style of cooking where nothing was wasted and every ingredient could be transformed into something special. Over time, casseroles changed, but turkey almondine remains part of Betty Crocker's approach to thrifty holiday cooking. It reminded families that creativity mattered just as much as cost, and that even simple dishes could feel luxurious with one thoughtful topping. The warm aroma drifting from the oven made homes feel full again even after the big day had passed. Cheese-stuffed celery sticks were a quick and elegant appetizer that brought fresh crunch and creamy richness together in a perfect bite. Crisp celery stalks were hollowed out slightly and filled with soft cream cheese or shredded cheddar spread, often seasoned with herbs or a hint of garlic. This recipe was popular for its simplicity and speed, requiring no cooking and very few ingredients. It was a staple at parties, potlucks, and family gatherings where finger foods were favored for their ease and social appeal. The combination of cool, crunchy celery with the smooth, flavorful cheese created a refreshing contrast that was both satisfying and light. Cheese-stuffed celery sticks reflected mid-century American cooking's love for practical, no-fuss recipes that still managed to impress guests. They were also a convenient way to include vegetables in a snack without losing flavor or appeal. Many remember this appetizer as a classic, nostalgic part of celebrations where simple ingredients transformed into delightful treats. Cottage cheese and pineapple mold was supposed to be good for you, and that alone made it stand out. Made with lemon gelatin, cottage cheese, and crushed pineapple, it was the health-conscious cousin of all those sweeter, wilder Jell-O dishes. This one meant business. It had protein, it had fruit, and it had just enough tang to make you pause before the second bite. You would see it on buffet tables, nestled between cold cuts and deviled eggs, maybe with a ring of canned mandarin slices around it. It was cold. It was firm. And it looked neat on a plate. Some people topped it with a spoonful of mayonnaise. Others ate it plain. It came from a time when salads were molded, not tossed, and Betty Crocker gave it pride of place in her light fare section. It was a compromise between diet food and real food, between something sweet and something filling. And for what it was, it worked. It kept you full. It kept the gelatin trend going, and it kept turning up in every church kitchen from coast to coast. Using mayonnaise to keep meatloaf moist was an unexpected ingredient tip that Betty Crocker's cookbooks offered to ensure tender, juicy results in this classic dish. Incorporating mayonnaise into the meat mixture added fat and moisture, preventing the meatloaf from drying out during baking. This simple addition helped maintain a soft texture, enhancing the overall eating experience. The trick was especially helpful in times when leaner cuts of meat were used or when cooks wanted to stretch ingredients without sacrificing quality. Betty Crocker's advice reflected an understanding of ingredient functionality and an innovative approach to improving traditional recipes. This method contributed to meatloaf's reputation as a comforting, reliable meal that families could enjoy regularly. Using mayonnaise in meatloaf demonstrated the mid-century home cook's creativity and willingness to experiment with familiar pantry items. It remains a popular secret for achieving the perfect meatloaf today. Apple and cheese sandwiches were once a simple but clever Betty Crocker lunch suggestion that balanced crisp freshness with hearty comfort. Thin slices of tart apple were layered between bread with cheddar cheese, sometimes lightly toasted to bring the flavors together. The contrast of sweet apple and salty cheese made the sandwich memorable, and the crunch of fruit added texture that plain cheese sandwiches lacked. Housewives liked it because it used everyday ingredients yet still felt creative, and it fit neatly into the trend of fruit and dairy combinations that filled mid-century cookbooks. Children often enjoyed the sweetness, while adults appreciated how satisfying the pairing could be without any meat. It was also a thrifty recipe since apples and cheese were accessible staples that could stretch across many meals. Apple and cheese sandwiches reflected the Betty Crocker idea that lunches could be practical, wholesome, and still carry a touch of novelty. Today, the pairing survives in snack trays, but the sandwich form has nearly disappeared. Cracker Stack lunches were the shortcut every lunchbox kid quietly loved, and every parent threw together when time was short. You took Ritz crackers, layered slices of American cheese between them, and tossed in some apple slices on the side. It was simple, salty, and filled you up without needing to cook a thing. Old lunchbox guides always had this one listed because it hit that sweet spot between easy, affordable, and kid-friendly. Some folks swapped in peanut butter or ham, but the classic cheese and cracker combo stuck around the longest. It was not gourmet, but it got the job done. Quick, portable, and ready before the bus pulled up. It sounds basic now, but for families juggling busy mornings and tight grocery budgets, Cracker Stacks were a reliable lunch that needed zero effort to pull off. Tomato aspic ring was a savory gelatin dish that once appeared in nearly every Betty Crocker holiday spread, even though today most people cannot imagine eating tomato juice suspended in a mold. Your grandparents knew it as a classic cold salad presented in bright red rings filled with crisp lettuce, celery, or cucumber in the center. It was elegant by mid-century standards, a way to show skill and modern taste when gelatin molds were considered the height of home entertaining. The mixture combined seasoned tomato liquid, gelatin, Worcestershire, and sometimes chopped vegetables, then chilled until firm enough to slice. The aspic was served alongside turkey ham or roast, making it a refreshing counterbalance to heavy foods. It looked dramatic on a table, especially when unmolded onto a polished platter shaped perfectly smooth and glistening under holiday lights. Time changed the expectations of Christmas menus, and with that change, tomato aspic faded quietly from homes replaced by fresher, lighter dishes. But for families who remember it, the aspic was a sign of tradition, care, and pride in presenting something beautiful even when ingredients were humble. It carried the spirit of a hostess who wanted her table to look as joyful as the season itself. Scallion pancakes were quick pan-fried cakes made from a simple batter mixed with chopped scallions, delivering a savory and fragrant snack or side dish. These pancakes were beloved for their crispy edges, tender interior, and the bright, oniony flavor from the scallions. Their preparation was straightforward and fast, requiring only minutes to cook in a hot skillet, making them perfect for busy families or impromptu meals. Scallion pancakes reflected the mid-century interest in adding fresh herbs and vegetables to simple recipes to enhance flavor and nutrition. They could be served as an appetizer, breakfast item, or side dish alongside main courses, showcasing their versatility. The pancakes' comforting texture and mild yet distinct taste made them a cherished part of many home kitchens. For many, scallion pancakes recalled memories of quick dinners and the joy of making simple ingredients shine. This one was for when you were short on time but still wanted something hot and happy. Cheese-stuffed wieners were just hot dogs split down the center, filled with American cheese and relish, and broiled until bubbly. The edges curled, the cheese melted, and the smell was unmistakable. Kids begged for these. Adults did not mind them either. You could make a whole tray in 10 minutes and serve it with buttered toast or tater tots. Some people added mustard before broiling. Others waited until the plate. The best part? It cost next to nothing. A pack of hot dogs, a few cheese slices, and a little relish went a long way. It was in Betty Crocker's section for fast meals and after-school snacks, but it showed up at dinner tables more often than you would think. It was warm, it was cheesy, and it made you feel like you had done something clever with what you had. There were fancier dishes, sure, but this one always disappeared first. Adding instant potato flakes to thicken soups and sauces was a convenient shortcut, common in mid-century kitchens that simplified thickening without the need for flour or roux. This technique involved sprinkling dehydrated potato flakes into hot liquids to quickly achieve the desired consistency. The flakes absorbed liquid rapidly, thickening broths and gravies while adding a subtle, creamy texture. Betty Crocker's cookbooks recommended this method for its speed and ease, especially when time or ingredients were limited. It allowed cooks to rescue thin or watery dishes without extra cooking steps. This shortcut fit well with the era's emphasis on efficiency and resourcefulness in meal preparation. Using instant potato flakes also provided a gluten-free thickening alternative before awareness of dietary restrictions became widespread. This technique remains useful for cooks who want fast, reliable results when thickening soups or sauces. Peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches were among the sweetest creations to appear in Betty Crocker's booklets, especially popular with children. Fluffy marshmallow creme was spread thickly over bread and topped with peanut butter, creating a gooey, indulgent filling. The result was sticky, sweet, and satisfying, the kind of lunchbox sandwich that felt like a treat rather than a chore. Parents liked them because they were inexpensive and quick to make, needing only pantry staples. Children adored them for their candy-like sweetness, often trading for them at school lunches. These sandwiches reflected the mid-century fascination with marshmallow creme, which was promoted as versatile, modern, and fun. While adults sometimes criticized them for being too sweet, they remained a household favorite because of how easy and comforting they were. Betty Crocker recipes often carried that balance between thrift and joy, and this sandwich embodied the playful side of her cooking style. Though rarely eaten today, peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches remain a nostalgic memory for those who grew up in that era. Cheese Dreams were the open-faced, melty sandwiches that turned plain old white bread into lunch in under 10 minutes. You laid out a slice of bread, topped it with American cheese, and stuck it under the broiler until bubbly and browned. If you had extras lying around, you could throw on a tomato slice or a strip of bacon, but most folks kept it simple. Cheese Dreams popped up in every old-school cookbook as a lifesaver for hungry kids, rushed workdays or weekends when grocery shopping had not happened yet. It was one of those lunches that made the most of cheap pantry basics, but still felt warm and filling. The cheese bubbled up golden and gooey, the edges of the bread crisped up just enough, and lunch was done before you even had time to set the table. Families loved it because it tasted good, cost next to nothing, and required zero effort. It was one of those old-fashioned meals that looked like a shortcut but stuck around because it simply worked when time and money were both tight. Cranberry upside-down cake was one of those forgotten Christmas desserts that once appeared in early Betty Crocker cookbooks as a bright jewel-toned centerpiece. It began with a layer of cranberry sprinkled with sugar in the bottom of a cake pan, their tartness softening as the heat transformed them into a glossy red topping. Over this, she poured a light vanilla batter that baked into a soft golden layer, absorbing just enough cranberry juice to tint the edges. When the cake was flipped onto a platter, the cranberries glistened like holiday ornaments, creating a dessert that felt both simple and dramatic. Families served it warm with whipped cream, melting slowly down the sides, a contrast of tart berries and sweet cake that captured the spirit of winter gatherings. It carried the charm of recipes made from pantry staples rather than store-bought shortcuts, and it celebrated cranberries in a way modern holiday menus rarely revisit. This cake disappeared quietly as tastes changed, and as gelatin molds and chocolate desserts grew more popular, but older cookbooks still hold the memory of its red shimmer. Grandparents remembered it as a dessert that looked impressive without costing much, perfect for holiday tables when creativity mattered just as much as flavor. Today it remains a nostalgic reminder of the early Betty Crocker era when home bakers trusted their pans, their instincts, and the seasonal ingredients waiting in their cabinets. It was a dish that reflected warmth, care, and a little holiday magic in every slice. The Easy Cheese Ball was a party staple that found its way into countless social gatherings thanks to its fast assembly and crowd-pleasing taste. Made by mixing cream cheese with shredded cheddar cheese, along with seasonings that could be adjusted to taste, the mixture was rolled into a compact ball and often coated with chopped nuts or herbs for added texture and flavor. This no-bake recipe required little more than stirring and shaping, making it accessible for even the busiest host. Cheese balls became iconic as appetizer centerpieces during holiday celebrations or casual get-togethers, providing a rich and creamy bite that paired perfectly with crackers or fresh vegetables. The balance of sharp cheddar and smooth cream cheese created a flavor that was both indulgent and nostalgic, reminding many of simpler times spent in lively company. Its speedy preparation and versatile presentation helped cement the cheese ball's place in the canon of vintage party foods, proving that deliciousness and convenience could go hand in hand. Cheese and olive dip was a creamy and savory spread that blended shredded cheese with chopped olives to create a flavorful, quick appetizer. This dip was ideal for entertaining or casual snacking, offering a rich taste with a salty, briny punch from the olives. Its no-cook preparation meant it could be whipped up in minutes, perfect for last-minute guests or easy weekend treats. Cheese and olive dip fit the mid-century American penchant for combining familiar flavors into new, exciting dishes that required little effort. Served with crackers, bread, or raw vegetables, it became a popular addition to party trays and family tables alike. The combination of sharp cheese and tangy olives created a balance that was both indulgent and satisfying. This recipe remains a nostalgic favorite, evoking the convivial atmosphere of mid-century social gatherings and simple, delicious home cooking. This one was part sandwich, part layer cake, and all nostalgia. The frosted sandwich loaf was Betty Crocker's answer to fancy party food on a budget. You took a loaf of white bread, sliced it horizontally, then filled each layer with a different salad: tuna, egg, ham, or chicken. Some versions even added pimento spread or olive paste for color and flair. Once stacked, you frosted the whole thing with whipped cream cheese like it was a cake. You could tint the frosting with food coloring to match the occasion: pink for baby showers, green for St. Patrick's Day, and blue if you were feeling adventurous. Sometimes folks even piped decorations on top like it was a birthday cake. It was chilled, sliced, and served with little lemon wedges or parsley for flair. Some people loved it. Others called it a culinary crime. But no one ever forgot it. It lived in every Betty Crocker book from the 1950s through the 1970s, usually filed under "Entertaining Made Easy." It was the kind of thing you brought to luncheons or tea parties back when those still happened. It was strange, it was sincere, and honestly, it was kind of beautiful. Canned peach whipped dessert was pure shortcut satisfaction. You took canned peaches, drained them, blended them smooth, and folded them into whipped topping with a spoonful of lemon juice or gelatin. Then you chilled it into a light, creamy mousse that tasted like summer and convenience. It was airy, fruity, and dead simple, You could serve it in sherbet glasses or scoop it into graham cracker crusts and call it pie. Either way, people smiled. This was one of those desserts you made when company was coming in 10 minutes and the fridge looked bare. It was sweet without being heavy, pretty without needing decoration, and it made canned fruit feel like a treat instead of a compromise. In the 1970s, recipes like this were everywhere, bright, light, and built to impress with as little effort as possible. Some added marshmallows, others threw in coconut flakes. But the heart of the dish was always the same. Take what you have, whip it into something cheerful, and serve it cold. Betty Crocker called it peach whip. Everyone else called it dessert. Microwaving butter wrapped in parchment for even melting was a clever method shared in Betty Crocker's cookbooks to ensure butter melted smoothly without separating or overheating. This technique involved wrapping a stick or portion of butter in parchment paper before placing it in the microwave for short intervals. The parchment protected the butter from direct heat, allowing it to soften evenly and preventing the fats from separating, which often happened when butter was microwaved unwrapped. This method saved time compared to melting butter on the stove while maintaining ideal texture for baking or cooking. It was especially useful in mid-century kitchens where efficiency and precision were valued. By using parchment, home cooks avoided the mess and uneven results of traditional melting methods. This trick reflected the era's increasing use of microwaves and new kitchen materials to improve everyday cooking. It remains a handy tip for modern cooks seeking quick, reliable butter melting without sacrificing quality. Tomato and cottage cheese sandwiches were a thrifty and wholesome Betty Crocker idea that turned simple staples into filling lunches. Thick slices of ripe tomato were layered on bread spread with seasoned cottage cheese, sometimes with just a sprinkle of salt or pepper. The flavor was light, fresh, and tangy, offering protein and satisfaction without relying on meat. Housewives liked the recipe because it was affordable, quick to prepare, and provided a refreshing alternative to heavier sandwiches. Adults appreciated its mild taste and colorful presentation, especially during warm summer months. Children were less enthusiastic, but the sandwich still held a place in kitchens as a practical, balanced option. It reflected mid-century emphasis on dairy as both thrifty and healthful, aligning with Betty Crocker's message of nutritious yet simple meals. Though forgotten today, tomato and cottage cheese sandwiches once stood as a resourceful lunch idea rooted in everyday ingredients. Egg and ketchup stir-fry over rice was the no-fuss pantry lunch that every family had in their back pocket when groceries were running low but bellies still needed filling. You cracked a couple of eggs into a pan, scrambled them up with a little oil, added a squirt of ketchup, and poured the whole thing over leftover rice. That was it. Done in under 10 minutes, salty, tangy, and surprisingly satisfying for something so simple. Kids loved it because it tasted like breakfast and lunch at the same time, with just enough of that sweet ketchup kick to keep things interesting. Parents leaned on it because it used what they already had in the kitchen. Eggs, rice, and ketchup were always hanging around. Some families added soy sauce, scallions, or even a slice of processed cheese to stretch it further, but most kept it basic and fast. You could find this recipe scribbled in lunch guides, tucked inside old homemaker cookbooks, or passed along by neighbors who knew how to stretch leftovers into a real meal. It was not fancy, but it filled you up when time and money were tight. Golden squash pie was the mid-century alternative to pumpkin pie when winter squash was cheaper, easier to store, or more available. Betty Crocker offered versions that used mashed squash blended with spices, milk, and eggs to create a smooth custard filling glowing a deeper gold than traditional pumpkin. The pie baked into a warm, sweet, earthy dessert that tasted familiar yet slightly richer. Families made it when budgets were tight or when gardens produced more squash than anything else, making it a practical but delicious holiday choice. The filling held a natural sweetness that felt comforting after long, cold weeks, and the color brought brightness to winter tables. Slices disappeared quickly because the flavor surprised people every time, reminding them that simple ingredients could still feel festive. Cheese and ham toasties were the go-to open-faced sandwiches that warmed countless kitchens with their bubbly golden finish. This simple dish combined slices of bread, topped with generous layers of cooked ham and melted cheese, then broiled until the cheese reached that perfect stretch and the edges of the bread crisped slightly. They were beloved for their rich flavor and the satisfying combination of savory ham with creamy, gooey cheese. Beyond their taste, these toasties were quick to make and required very few ingredients, which made them ideal for those hectic days when dinner needed to be on the table fast. Often served as a light meal or snack, they captured the spirit of mid-century home cooking, straightforward, filling, and comforting. This recipe was especially handy when the family wanted something warm without spending too much time in the kitchen. Their simplicity did not sacrifice flavor, making cheese and ham toasties a nostalgic reminder of those quick yet satisfying meals shared around kitchen tables. The magic word here was impossible, because this pie was the kind of recipe you did not believe until you saw it yourself. You mixed the ingredients in a bowl, poured it into a pan, and somehow, by the grace of Betty Crocker and biscuit, it baked into a dinner with a built-in crust. Ground beef, taco seasoning, shredded cheese, and chopped onions all folded into a batter that settled itself like it knew what it was doing. You did not need a rolling pin. You did not even need skill. That was the charm of the Impossible series in those old cookbooks. It made anyone feel like a home cook. This taco pie was easy to make, easy to slice, and easy to get second helpings of. Some people added olives, others tossed in green chilies or a handful of corn. Whatever you did, it was the kind of weeknight meal that felt like a win. Even the picky kids would take a bite and ask for more. This was comfort food that did not look like much, but always came through, just like Betty intended. Reheating mashed potatoes with milk and butter was a practical tip from Betty Crocker's cookbooks that helped restore the creamy texture and rich flavor of leftover potatoes. Instead of drying out when reheated, adding a splash of milk and a pat of butter allowed the mashed potatoes to regain their smoothness and moisture. This technique turned a potentially dull leftover into a dish that tasted freshly made, making it more appealing to eat again. It was especially useful during busy weeks when preparing new meals was challenging, but enjoying comfort food was still desired. The method was simple and accessible, requiring only basic dairy staples found in most kitchens. Betty Crocker's advice demonstrated a thoughtful approach to reducing waste and enhancing leftovers, reflecting mid-century household priorities. This reheating trick remains popular among cooks who appreciate quick fixes that do not sacrifice taste or quality. It shows how small adjustments can bring warmth and satisfaction to everyday meals. Pineapple and cottage cheese sandwiches added a sweet, tropical note to the mid-century lunch table. Canned pineapple rings or tidbits were layered with cottage cheese on slices of soft bread, sometimes with lettuce for freshness or butter to prevent sogginess. The combination was creamy, tangy, and lightly sweet, offering a refreshing alternative to heavier meat-based sandwiches. These sandwiches often appeared at luncheons, teas, or church socials, where canned fruit was seen as both modern and sophisticated. Housewives liked them because they were quick, inexpensive, and provided nourishment without much effort. Canned pineapple was easy to keep in the pantry, and cottage cheese was promoted as a wholesome dairy product. Children sometimes enjoyed the sweetness, though adults were more drawn to the novelty of the pairing. Pineapple and cottage cheese sandwiches reflected the era's fascination with canned goods and simple recipes that still looked special. Though forgotten today, they remain an example of Betty Crocker's adventurous, thrifty approach to everyday meals. Canned sardine and onion sandwiches were the bold, briny lunches that never pretended to be fancy, but quietly stuck around in old cookbooks for decades. You opened a can of sardines, layered them onto bread, added thin slices of raw onion, and called it lunch. That was it, done in minutes and packing more flavor than most people could handle. It was a Depression-era staple that kept going because sardines were cheap, lasted forever, and gave a salty, filling meal with almost no prep. Some folks added mustard or lettuce, but most kept it plain and sharp. The onions gave crunch and heat, the sardines brought salt and oil, and together, it was the kind of lunch that stuck with you, whether you liked it or not. Families leaned on meals like this because they filled you up when the fridge was empty and the grocery budget was tight. You could find this recipe tucked into old homemaker guides listed under quick lunches or pantry meals. It was strong, weirdly satisfying, and pure old-school practicality on a plate. Though modern tastes have shifted away from such spreads, the old cookbooks preserve its place as a symbol of holiday hospitality. It remains a snapshot of a time when Christmas parties revolved around carefully arranged trays, small bites, and the belief that every guest should feel pampered, even with budget-friendly recipes. Holiday cheese ball with pimiento was once a Christmas essential displayed proudly on appetizer tables and party buffets in countless Betty Crocker holiday guides. The mixture blended cream cheese, cheddar, pimiento, and seasonings into a smooth, moldable mixture that was shaped by hand and rolled in chopped nuts for texture. Served with crackers, celery sticks, or bread rounds, the cheese ball brought color, flavor, and a sense of fun to the holiday spread. It captured the mid-century love of molded foods that were shaped, sculpted, dressed, and decorated for special occasions. The cheese ball was simple, affordable, and endlessly adaptable, making it a favorite among hostesses who wanted something reliable yet festive. Over the decades, it faded as tastes shifted toward fresher, lighter holiday foods, but vintage photos still show it shining beneath tinsel garlands and brass candlesticks. It was a symbol of celebration built from pantry staples and Betty Crocker's message that holiday magic could be made from anything when handled with pride. Baked apple slices with cinnamon were a quick and warm dessert solution for families craving a little sweetness without fuss. Thinly sliced apples were layered in a baking dish, sprinkled with cinnamon and sugar, and then baked until tender and caramelized, releasing a fragrant aroma that filled kitchens. This dessert captured the essence of autumn and holiday seasons, but was simple enough to be enjoyed any time of the year. The combination of tart and sweet from the apples and cinnamon offered comfort and nostalgia, reminding many of home-cooked treats from their childhood. It required no complicated ingredients or long preparation, which made it a perfect choice for those 10-minute meal plans or last-minute dessert needs. Its wholesome nature meant it was also seen as a slightly healthier option compared to heavier sweets, making it popular among families looking to balance flavor with simplicity. The baked apple slices carried the warmth and joy of family gatherings, wrapped in the cozy scent of cinnamon. This was breakfast with a sense of humor. You took slices of bologna, pressed them into muffin tins, and baked them until they curled into little cups. Then you filled those cups with scrambled eggs, topped them with a sprinkle of cheese or chives, and popped them back in the oven. Bologna cups with scrambled eggs looked like something out of a diner, but came from the pages of Betty Crocker's mid-century morning section. It was quick. It was clever, and it made a simple breakfast feel like a treat. Kids loved the shape. Grown-ups loved the price tag. You could prep them ahead of time or make them on a Sunday morning when everyone was still half asleep. They sat neatly on plates and made even toast look fancy. It was the kind of small, silly dish that turned a regular day into something to remember. And for a generation raised on bologna, it felt like home. Browning ground meat in small batches for better flavor was a technique Betty Crocker's cookbooks recommended to home cooks aiming for evenly cooked, richly flavored dishes. Cooking smaller amounts at a time allowed the meat to brown properly rather than steam, enhancing its taste and texture. This method prevented overcrowding the pan, which can cause the meat to release moisture and become soggy. The resulting browned meat developed a deeper color and more complex flavors, making it ideal for sauces, casseroles, and skillet meals. This cooking trick was valued in mid-century kitchens for producing superior results with common ingredients like ground beef or pork. Betty Crocker's detailed guidance on this technique reflected the growing culinary knowledge shared with home cooks to elevate everyday meals. Taking the extra time to brown meat in batches showed an investment in flavor that distinguished home-cooked dishes. This approach continues to be a fundamental principle for achieving delicious and well-textured meals. Pineapple and ham salad sandwiches were a way to combine thrift and festivity into one mid-century lunch. Diced ham was mixed with canned pineapple and mayonnaise, then spooned generously onto soft rolls or slices of white bread. The result was sweet, savory, creamy, and satisfying, making it a popular choice for luncheons, picnics, or even Sunday suppers. Canned pineapple gave it an exotic flair, while ham added protein and substance. The mayonnaise tied everything together, creating a filling that was hearty but still refreshing. These sandwiches reflected the Betty Crocker tendency to use canned goods creatively, turning pantry staples into meals that felt celebratory. They were also practical, since the filling could be made ahead and stored in the refrigerator until needed. Children loved them for their sweetness, while adults appreciated the balance of flavors. Pineapple and ham salad sandwiches may seem dated today, but they once carried a sense of novelty and joy to family tables. They showed how mid-century kitchens blended convenience with imagination. Fried bologna with mustard on toast was the quick stovetop lunch that somehow managed to taste better than it had any right to. You sliced bologna, tossed it in a hot pan, watched it curl up at the edges, and slapped it on toasted bread with a smear of yellow mustard. That was it. Lunch in under 10 minutes. It was salty, tangy, crispy around the edges, and showed up everywhere from lunch counters to kitchen tables when the grocery list was running short. Bologna was cheap, lasted forever in the fridge, and frying it gave it just enough of a glow-up to make it feel like more than sandwich meat. Some folks added a slice of cheese or swapped in rye bread, but the classic stayed simple and fast. Fried bologna with mustard was not glamorous, but it hit the spot when you needed something filling, salty, and satisfying without much effort. It was a staple in school lunchrooms, factory break rooms, and busy homes, sticking around because it was affordable, reliable, and always ready when the clock was ticking. Crown Roast of Frankfurters was a playful, iconic showpiece that Betty Crocker featured in mid-century Christmas entertaining guides using little more than hot dogs, toothpicks, and creativity. The Frankfurters were sliced at the ends to form decorative fringes, then stood upright in a circle tied or pinned until they formed a crown shape. The center was often filled with mashed potatoes, stuffing, or colorful relish, giving the dish a humorous but charming appearance. Families loved it because it felt festive without requiring expensive cuts of meat, a way to bring fun to the table when budgets were tight. Kids adored its look, adults appreciated its practicality, and hosts enjoyed presenting something eye-catching with minimal effort. It symbolized a time when imagination made up for limited resources, turning the simplest ingredient into a holiday centerpiece. Today, it survives mostly in old cookbooks and faded magazine clippings, but the memory of this quirky centerpiece reflects a Christmas world where fun mattered just as much as flavor. Cabbage and bacon slaw was a tangy and crunchy salad that combined shredded cabbage with crispy bacon bits and a bright vinegar-based dressing. This recipe brought together textures and flavors that balanced each other perfectly. The fresh crunch of cabbage, the smoky saltiness of bacon, and the sharpness of the dressing. It was a popular side dish for barbecues, picnics, and everyday dinners, especially in households looking to add a little zest to their meals without spending much time or money. The inclusion of bacon made this slaw more indulgent than traditional versions, offering a smoky depth that many found irresistible. Its quick assembly and use of basic ingredients reflected the mid-century American kitchen's focus on practical, flavorful dishes that could be prepared in minutes. Cabbage and bacon slaw was both a nod to resourceful cooking and a crowd pleaser that complemented a variety of main courses. For many families, it was a trusted recipe that brought a little extra brightness and satisfaction to the table. Peanut butter and bacon canapés were not your everyday snack. These tiny little rounds of toasted white bread were topped with a smear of peanut butter and a crisp slice of bacon. Salty met sweet, crunch met smooth, and somehow, it worked. These showed up at 1960s cocktail parties, baby showers, and any gathering where the host wanted to impress without overspending. They were odd, they were daring, and they were straight out of Betty Crocker's Party Nibbles playbook. You could make a whole tray in under 15 minutes, and people would still ask what was in them. It felt like food from a future that never came. Space-age appetizers meant to shock and delight. The peanut butter gave it creaminess. The bacon brought in the crunch, and the toasted bread tied it all together. Some folks added a sliver of banana, others sprinkled a little brown sugar on top. Either way, they disappeared fast. It was not about tradition. It was about surprise. And Betty Crocker knew exactly how to keep guests on their toes. Separating eggs with a plastic bottle was a clever, no-mess trick that Betty Crocker's cookbook shared to help home cooks quickly separate yolks from whites without special tools. The method involved squeezing a clean plastic bottle to create suction, and then gently releasing it near the yolk, which would be drawn up into the bottle, leaving the whites behind. This technique minimized mess, reduced the risk of breaking yolks, and required no additional utensils, making it accessible to cooks of all skill levels. It was especially helpful in recipes that called for multiple separated eggs, saving time and effort. The trick reflected mid-century America's practical mindset, emphasizing innovative yet simple ways to streamline cooking tasks. Betty Crocker's promotion of this hack encouraged experimentation and confidence in the kitchen. The plastic bottle method remains popular today for its ease and effectiveness, illustrating timeless cooking wisdom passed down through generations. Tomato aspic sandwiches were among the most unusual entries in Betty Crocker's mid-century repertoire. Tomato juice was mixed with gelatin, seasoned with vinegar, salt, and spices, and then chilled until firm. The resulting tomato aspic was sliced into neat squares and layered onto buttered bread, sometimes with a leaf of lettuce for presentation. These sandwiches were popular at luncheons, teas, and church socials, where their bright red color made them look festive. The flavor was tangy and savory, almost like a cold tomato salad, though the gelatin texture made them divisive. Housewives appreciated them because they were inexpensive, could be prepared in advance, and fit into the gelatin craze of the era. Tomato aspic sandwiches reflected the culture of thrift, creativity, and experimentation that defined much of mid-century cooking. They were unusual but memorable, showing how Betty Crocker recipes often blended practicality with novelty. While gelatin-based dishes have fallen out of favor today, tomato aspic sandwiches once stood proudly on tables as a symbol of refinement and clever homemaking. Peanut butter and bacon sandwiches were a bold combination that Betty Crocker guides introduced as a post-war treat, balancing thrift and indulgence. Creamy peanut butter was spread thickly on bread and topped with strips of crisp fried bacon, producing a salty, sweet blend that surprised many with how well it worked. Housewives liked the recipe because it used familiar staples that were inexpensive and filling while still feeling new and satisfying. The sandwiches required little effort to prepare, yet delivered a big impact in both flavor and heartiness, making them popular for quick lunches or snacks. Children enjoyed the bold mix of sweet and savory, while adults admired how the richness of peanut butter paired with the crunch of bacon. The recipe reflected the post-war shift toward abundance, when bacon was easier to find and peanut butter remained a pantry standard. Though rarely served today, peanut butter and bacon sandwiches once captured Betty Crocker's spirit of creative experimentation. Zucchini fritters from leftovers were the garden surplus lunch that turned backyard vegetables into something hot, crispy, and filling when you had more zucchini than you knew what to do with. You grated up those extra zucchinis, mixed them with flour, eggs, and a little seasoning, then pan-fried them until golden brown. It was quick, cheap, and showed up in nearly every Use Your Garden Haul cookbook from the 1970s. Backyard gardens always seemed to over-deliver on zucchini, and fritters were a fast, satisfying way to keep all that produce from going to waste. They crisped up around the edges, stayed soft in the center, and felt just hearty enough to pass for lunch. Some families added shredded cheese, herbs, or breadcrumbs to stretch them further, but most kept it simple with just the basics. It was frugal, filling, and practical, a classic example of how families made the most of what they grew. It might not have been exciting, but zucchini fritters worked hard to keep plates full and grocery spending low. Christmas cranberry chutney mold was one of the spiced gelatin dishes Betty Crocker pushed in her mid-century holiday menus, presenting cranberries not just as sauce, but as a shaped, glistening centerpiece. Cranberries, sugar spices, and sometimes citrus were simmered down, then mixed with gelatin, and poured into decorative molds that created scalloped or fluted designs once chilled. When unmolded, the chutney held its shape, beautifully glowing red like a gem under dining room lights. Its tangy, spiced flavor paired well with turkey ham and stuffing, offering a bright contrast to heavier dishes. The mold symbolized the era when gelatin creations were considered glamorous and the height of holiday presentation. It embraced the idea that even condiments could be elevated into showpieces with the right mold and a little creativity. Though chutney molds rarely appear, now they remain a hallmark of Betty Crocker's vintage Christmas style. 7 layers, 1 dish, and 0 fuss. That was the promise, and Betty Crocker delivered. This casserole had a rhythm to it. Raw potatoes, sliced onions, seasoned ground beef, corn, canned tomatoes, green beans, and a blanket of creamed soup poured over the top. Each layer had a job to do. The potatoes kept it hearty, the beef gave it bite, and the soup made it melt together into something you could scoop out with a big serving spoon. What made it so memorable was not the taste, though it was comforting, it was the way it looked. You built it up in a clear glass dish so everyone could admire the stripes of color before you dug in. It was tidy, predictable, and easy to make in big batches for church dinners, potlucks, or any Thursday where you needed to feed 6 people with 1 shopping bag. There were no surprises, just layers of thrift, texture, and a little bit of pride. It was one of those recipes that always came out looking better than it had any right to. And maybe that was enough. Macaroni salad was a picnic classic that found its way into countless American cookouts and family gatherings thanks to its simplicity and fresh flavor. This cold pasta salad combined cooked macaroni with mayonnaise, diced celery, onions, and sometimes hard-boiled eggs or pickles, creating a creamy and crunchy dish that was both filling and refreshing. Its ease of preparation and ability to be made ahead made it a favorite in homes and community events alike. Macaroni salad represented the kind of casual, crowd-pleasing side that paired well with barbecues, sandwiches, and fried foods common in mid-century America. Its versatility also allowed families to adjust ingredients based on what was available, making it economical as well as tasty. For many, this dish is deeply tied to warm weather memories and outdoor meals shared with friends and family. Swedish tea ring was the warm, fragrant holiday breakfast pastry that filled mid-century kitchens on Christmas morning thanks to its placement in Betty Crocker's festive baking guides. The ring began as a rich yeast dough rolled out and spread with cinnamon sugar butter and chopped nuts before being shaped into a circle and sliced partway through to create its distinctive twisted pattern. As it baked, the layers puffed into golden spirals, each one scented with spice and sweetness, drifting through the house like a holiday invitation. Families gathered around the table to tear off pieces while the ring was still warm, letting the sticky filling cling to their fingers and plates. It was both a breakfast and a celebration, an edible centerpiece meant to welcome the day with comfort and joy. The Swedish tea ring symbolized the idea that holiday mornings deserved something homemade and special even when money or time was limited. Once beloved in households across the country, it slowly disappeared as store-bought pastries replaced the ritual of rising early to bake. But the memory of that warm, ring-shaped pastry remains part of the old Betty Crocker Christmas spirit where traditions were built from dough sugar and shared moments around the kitchen table. Warming dinner rolls in a towel-wrapped basket to keep them soft was a presentation and freshness tip that enhanced family meals in mid-century America. This method involved placing freshly baked or warmed rolls inside a basket lined with a clean kitchen towel, which was then folded over to cover the bread. The towel helped trap heat and moisture, preventing the rolls from drying out or becoming crusty too quickly. Serving rolls this way kept them soft and inviting at the table, complementing hearty dinners and encouraging communal eating. Betty Crocker's cookbooks recommended this technique to elevate the dining experience with minimal effort. The approach combined practicality with a touch of hospitality, reflecting mid-century values around family meals and comfort. This warming method remains popular today for keeping bread fresh and appealing during gatherings. Carrot and raisin sandwiches reflected the mid-century fascination with vegetables turned into unexpected fillings. Grated carrots were mixed with raisins and mayonnaise, then spread onto slices of white bread for a sandwich that was both sweet and savory. The carrots provided crunch and freshness, while the raisins added bursts of sweetness that contrasted with the creamy mayonnaise. These sandwiches were popular for children's lunches, where they were promoted as a sneaky way to get vegetables onto the table. Housewives liked them because they were inexpensive, colorful, and practical, making use of ingredients that were almost always available. At teas or socials, they added variety to trays of finger sandwiches, standing out for their unusual combination. The recipe reflected Betty Crocker's encouragement of thrift and creativity, where even simple vegetables could become part of something special. Though carrot and raisin sandwiches are rarely made today, they once carried both practicality and charm, leaving behind a forgotten but fascinating glimpse of mid-century lunch culture. Baked bean toasties were the humble, hot lunches that turned pantry staples into something warm and satisfying in under 10 minutes. You grabbed a can of baked beans, spooned them over slices of soft white bread, sprinkled on shredded cheddar, and stuck the whole thing under the broiler. The cheese melted, the beans bubbled, and suddenly you had a lunch that felt filling and hearty without needing much effort. This quick meal showed up in old cookbooks, school cafeterias, and busy households when money was tight and grocery runs had not happened yet. It was the kind of food that stretched your budget, filled you up fast, and still tasted good, especially on a cold day when all you wanted was something warm and cheesy. Some folks added hot sauce or chopped onions, but the plain version stayed the classic. Baked bean toasties may not have won style points, but they worked, turning basic ingredients into lunch in record time. Cranberry candles mold was the kind of festive display that once sat proudly in the center of mid-century holiday tables, glowing red like stained glass under soft Christmas lights. Betty Crocker guides taught home cooks how to turn canned cranberry sauce, gelatin, and fruit into tall, candle-shaped molds that slid out of tin forms with a glossy wobble. Your grandparents loved these because they represented celebration on a budget, bright color without expensive ingredients, and a sense of style that made even simple meals feel special. The molds were often arranged on lettuce leaves or parsley borders with little almond slices or pineapple bits acting as pretend flames at the top. It was playful and decorative and absolutely everywhere in 1960s and 1970s cookbooks. Making them took patience because each mold had to chill long enough to hold its shape. But once they set, they looked like something pulled straight from a vintage magazine spread. Over time, gelatin dishes fell out of fashion, and cranberry candles mostly disappeared, leaving behind a memory of holidays when creativity mattered more than cost. The molds were not just food. They were holiday excitement in edible form, shaped by hands that wanted Christmas to feel magical no matter the budget. Corn fritters were quick little pancakes made by mixing canned corn into a simple batter and frying spoonfuls until golden and crisp. These fritters were beloved for their crunchy exterior and sweet bursts of corn inside, offering a delightful contrast in every bite. Their quick preparation time made them perfect for busy households looking to stretch pantry staples into tasty snacks or side dishes. Corn fritters carried a homespun charm, often served alongside main meals or enjoyed as finger food during casual gatherings. Their sweet and savory flavor made them versatile, appealing to children and adults alike. The use of canned corn reflected the mid-century trend of incorporating convenient canned goods into everyday cooking without sacrificing taste. These fritters were a testament to the resourcefulness of cooks who sought to make quick, satisfying dishes from simple ingredients. They also echoed the broader culinary tradition of turning humble crops into beloved comfort foods. This was dinner in its Sunday best. Creamed salmon in patty shells was the kind of thing you brought out when company was over, or when you wanted to feel like you had something special on the table. Canned salmon, thickened with a white sauce and spiked with lemon or parsley, spooned into puff pastry shells that puffed up like golden crowns in the oven. It was one of the fancier-looking dishes in Betty Crocker's lineup, but underneath the crust, it was all about stretching a can of fish into something warm and filling. You could find the patty shells frozen, or make them yourself with biscuit dough and a muffin tin. Either way, the trick was in the sauce. It had to be creamy but not heavy, tangy but not too fishy. If you did it right, it felt like something you might order at a hotel buffet. Kids sometimes picked the salmon out. Adults always cleaned their plates. And everyone agreed it looked way fancier than it cost. That was the Betty Crocker way. Soaking celery stalks in ice water was a simple yet effective trick that Betty Crocker's cookbooks shared to restore crispness to vegetables for salads and garnishes. This method involved placing celery stalks in a bowl of cold water with plenty of ice, allowing the vegetable to rehydrate and regain its fresh crunchiness. The trick was perfect for rescuing limp or slightly wilted celery, making it appealing for use in dishes where texture was key. Crisp celery elevated salads by adding a satisfying bite and fresh flavor, enhancing the overall eating experience. This quick fix was practical and required minimal effort, fitting well with the era's emphasis on efficient, economical cooking. It reflected the mid-century homemaker's desire to reduce waste and get the most out of ingredients. Soaking vegetables in ice water became a common household practice, proving that small kitchen habits could make a big difference in food quality. The trick remains a classic for anyone wanting to revive fresh produce and keep meals crisp and enjoyable. Peanut butter and watercress sandwiches were one of those quirky combinations that only the mid-century could truly embrace. Thick spreads of creamy peanut butter were layered onto soft bread, then topped with fresh watercress leaves. The peppery greens added sharpness, cutting through the richness of the peanut butter and making the sandwich both surprising and refreshing. Betty Crocker promoted it as a nutritious option, especially for children, since it paired protein with a leafy vegetable. At a time when mothers were encouraged to sneak greens into meals wherever possible, this recipe seemed clever. The sandwich was inexpensive, easy to prepare, and different enough to feel special in a school lunchbox or picnic basket. Adults often served them at luncheons alongside fruit cups, where the unusual pairing sparked conversation. While it may sound strange today, it reflected the era's spirit of experimentation and practicality. Peanut butter and watercress sandwiches vanished as tastes shifted toward sweeter or heartier fare, but they stand as an example of how inventive Betty Crocker recipes encouraged families to make do with what they had. Pimiento cheese sandwiches on white bread were the Southern lunchbox staple that quietly made their way into kitchens across the country. You made up a big batch of pimiento cheese, usually shredded cheddar, mayo, and little diced pimiento peppers, then slapped it between slices of soft sandwich bread. That was lunch, fast and done. If you were lucky, the batch had been chilling in the fridge overnight so the flavors had time to settle. It showed up everywhere, from school cafeterias to Sunday church gatherings, and you did not need fancy ingredients to pull it together. The filling looked bright orange and odd to anyone who had never tried it, but it was creamy, sharp, and surprisingly satisfying. Some folks added extras like sliced pickles or lettuce, but the plain version stuck around because it was quick, cheap, and kept everyone fed when time was tight. Old cookbooks had pages of pimiento cheese variations, but the classic stayed the same: easy, portable, and just filling enough to get you through the day. Hot dog and cheese roll-ups were the lazy day lunch every kid begged for, and every parent. Caramel biscuit pudding was the warm, mid-century dessert that transformed leftover biscuits into something rich and comforting during winter evenings. Betty Crocker promoted it as a thrifty yet elegant solution for holiday meals using torn biscuits soaked in a caramel syrup made from brown sugar butter and milk. As the pudding baked, the biscuits absorbed the syrup and softened into tender pockets of sweetness, while the top formed a glossy, sticky layer that crackled under the spoon. It filled kitchens with the deep smell of caramel-toasted bread and Christmas spices, making even small homes feel full of warmth. This pudding was a favorite because it stretched ingredients without feeling cheap, turning scraps into a dessert that tasted indulgent. Served with whipped cream or a drizzle of warm syrup, it felt like something special enough for company, yet simple enough for any winter night. Over the years, as baking trends changed, caramel biscuit pudding faded from holiday tables, replaced by quicker store-bought sweets. But for those who remember it, the dish represents resourcefulness, hospitality, and the magic of transforming everyday ingredients into something unforgettable. Easy Peach Cobbler was a warm and comforting dessert that could be quickly assembled with canned peaches and a biscuit-like topping before being baked to golden perfection. This recipe was beloved for its speed and simplicity, providing a sweet finish to meals without long preparation times or complicated steps. The juicy peaches offered a natural sweetness and tender texture, while the biscuit topping added a soft, buttery contrast that soaked up the fruit's juices. Easy Peach Cobbler fit perfectly into mid-century home kitchens where convenience was prized alongside flavor. It was often served with a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a dollop of whipped cream to elevate the experience. This dish evoked feelings of home and hearth, reminding many of family dinners and holidays filled with warmth and love. Its reliance on pantry staples and canned fruit also made it economical and accessible, adding to its popularity during the busy post-war era. Easy Peach Cobbler remains a nostalgic favorite for its blend of comfort, sweetness, and effortless preparation. Baked Spam and pineapple slices were holiday cheer on a budget. You took thick slices of Spam, topped them with canned pineapple rings, sprinkled on some brown sugar, and baked them until glossy. The sugar caramelized, the pineapple softened, and the Spam, somehow, felt like it belonged. It was easy, fast, and affordable, 3 things Betty Crocker knew families needed. This dish showed up in the special meals section of cookbooks meant for people who still wanted a little sparkle but could not afford a ham. It was the kind of thing you served at Easter when meat was too expensive or at Christmas when time was tight. It made the house smell sweet and savory at the same time. It looked cheerful, with its bright yellow rings and glossy glaze. And it reminded you that doing the best with what you had was not just practical, it was meaningful. People cut it into wedges, served it with mashed potatoes or rice, and called it a celebration. Was it elegant? Maybe not. But it was festive, and sometimes that mattered more. Reviving wilted lettuce with cold water and a pinch of sugar was a refreshing trick from Betty Crocker's cookbooks to freshen salad greens before serving. The method involved soaking limp lettuce leaves in a bowl of ice-cold water with a small amount of sugar added to the water. The sugar helped to restore crispness and improve flavor, while the cold water rehydrated the leaves, making them firm and appetizing again. This technique was especially useful when lettuce had been stored too long or was slightly past its prime. Reviving greens in this way allowed cooks to reduce waste and ensure salads looked fresh and inviting. The trick reflected the mid-century home cook's resourcefulness and desire to maximize ingredient usability. It also emphasized the importance of texture and presentation in everyday meals. The cold water and sugar soak remains a popular method for restoring crispness to leafy greens in kitchens today. Canned mushroom soup over toast was the heavy hot lunch that filled bellies fast when groceries were low and no one had time to cook. You opened a can of cream of mushroom soup, heated it on the stove, poured it over buttered toast slices, and called it done. It was quick, salty, warm, and showed up in almost every old-school cookbook as a no-fuss meal for tight grocery weeks. Families leaned on it during cold winters, rushed afternoons, or whenever the fridge looked empty but people still needed to eat. It stuck to your ribs, filled you up, and somehow made basic pantry ingredients stretch just a little further. Some folks dressed it up with black pepper, shredded cheese, or canned peas if they had them, but the plain version, soup over toast, was the classic. You would find this little meal in lunch guides, old diner menus, and those faded recipe cards passed down through families. It was simple, a little salty, and proof that even the most basic pantry staples could pull together lunch when money was tight and time was short. Dutch Appelkuchen was the cozy breakfast treat Betty Crocker pushed during the holiday season, combining soft dough warm apples and a sugary crumble topping. It was baked in wide pans so that families could cut generous squares on Christmas morning, filling the house with the smell of cinnamon-rising dough and sweet apples. This dish blended the feel of coffee cake with the tenderness of fruit pastries, making it both comforting and celebratory. It disappeared as store-bought pastries replaced homemade breakfasts, but it remains one of the most nostalgic Betty Crocker holiday bakes. Grandparents served it warm with butter melting into the top, and children gathered close to the table, waiting for their piece as the winter sun came through frosted windows. It made mornings feel special long before gifts were opened. Parker House rolls were the kind of soft, buttery rolls that seemed to appear on every family table without fail. These rolls baked quickly in the oven and had a distinct folded shape that gave them a slightly crispy outside and a fluffy, tender inside. Their rich butter flavor and simple ingredients made them a staple that anyone could whip up even on busy weeknights. What made these rolls especially appealing was their versatility. They paired well with soups, stews, or just a pat of butter on their own. People loved them for holidays and everyday meals alike, and they were often part of the tradition in many American households. The recipe was straightforward enough that even beginner cooks could master it, adding to its popularity. With the convenience of a quick baking time, Parker House rolls fit perfectly into the post-war era's need for efficient yet comforting foods. They remain a nostalgic favorite, reminding many of cozy family dinners and the smell of fresh bread wafting through the kitchen. These meatballs were not just dinner, they were a conversation starter. You took one look at the little rice poking out of the sides, and you knew it was Betty Crocker's version of thrift at its finest. Porcupine meatballs were made with ground beef, raw rice, tomato sauce, and a few shakes of onion powder and salt. No breadcrumbs, no eggs, no fancy binding, just what was already in the pantry. As they simmered in the sauce, the rice cooked and swelled, poking out like tiny quills. It was clever, cheap, and surprisingly filling. You could stretch a single pound of meat into a dish big enough to feed the whole family, with leftovers for the next night if you were lucky. Kids loved them because they looked funny. Parents loved them because they worked. There was something cozy about them, sitting in a Pyrex dish on the stovetop, bubbling under a glass lid, while the kitchen filled with steam. This recipe showed up in nearly every Betty Crocker paperback printed between 1950 and 1980, and for good reason. It was one of those meals that felt like it came with a hug, and once you tried them, you never really forgot them. If any of these handwritten recipes stirred a memory, drop it in the comments and tap like and subscribe to keep the old flavors alive.